Good afternoon. I apologize for not being able to be there in person and truly appreciate your flexibility in letting me come to you in this manner instead of face to face. So I have 3 sections that we'll go over today. Build in some time to discuss at your table, reflect on things that you learned or that you might need or that we need to follow up on. And then we'll go from there. So hopefully you get some good ideas and some good resources, but also give some good feedback on where to go from here as far as resources and instructional materials and things that we might need. Okay? All right. So writing, we have the K-5 audience today. And before we get into just specifically writing, I want to let you know that reading and writing are definitely connected, and as much as possible we want to be doing these things together. The interconnectivity between reading and writing is well proven. However, explicit instruction in each is needed. So instruction in one or the other is unlikely to be an adequate replacement for the other if the goal is to develop students who can both read and write well. We need to be trying to influence this with our general education teachers as much as possible as well. So the relationships are unidirectional and bidirectional. So the bidirectional relationships, each influences each other. So handwriting contributes to spelling, spelling contributes to handwriting across grades 1 through 6. So in grades 1 through 6, we have to be thinking anytime we got a pencil in our hand that we're thinking about spelling, anytime we're spelling, we have a pencil in our hand. The next one is spelling and compositional fluency and quality are interconnected in the primary grades as well. So if we can spell well, then we can write with more fluency. Compositional fluency and compositional quality are also interconnected across all the grade levels. So if we can be fluent at it, our quality of composition improves as well. All right, so the directional relationships. Handwriting significantly influences word recognition in grade 2. So the more we're writing in grade 2, the more those students are going to recognize those words because they have to read them and they have to write them. So grade 2 is a high point for that. Not to say we don't do that in other grade levels, but it significantly influences word recognition, especially in grade 2. There's a direct path of influence from word recognition to handwriting and spelling at all grade levels, however. So if we're reading, we need to be writing. If we're spelling, we need to be writing. Spelling also has a direct relationship to reading comprehension in most grades. Reading has a direct influence on spelling at all grade levels. And this will not come to a surprise to you, but better readers are exposed to more words and therefore result in better spelling, right? Duh. Reading comprehension has a direct effect on compositional fluency and quality as well. So obviously, again, better readers write more. So reading and writing have those relationships. The last one is compositional fluency and quality have a direct influence on reading comprehension in the later grades. So grades 4, 5, and 6, that compositional fluency and quality will influence how well they can comprehend. So we have to have good readers and we have to have good writers. I know I'm talking to special ed teachers today, but you're going to see this same sort of thing with our TAG kids. A lot of times we have really great readers in TAG, but they're not great writers. We have the same thing in spelling. They might be better at reading, but they're not so great at writing. These things go together and we have to constantly be teaching them together. There's a document, Writing to Read, that I was linked here or in your presentation. These 3 big ideas came from that Writing to Read research. Writing about a passage improves comprehension more than just reading and then rereading it and studying what's on the page and discussing what's on the page. Adding that writing component, adding notes, adding analysis, adding summarizing, adding writing down the main idea, all of those things help improve reading comprehension. Explicit instruction in spelling, as well as explicit instruction in sentence construction, also improves reading fluency. So the more they can recognize those spelling words, the more they can read them at an automatic level. And then lastly, explicit instruction in the text structures of model passages, followed by writing using those similar structures, along with emphasis on sentence and paragraph construction and sentence combining, improves reading comprehension. So we want to be teaching text structures. We want to be able to recognize those in text we read, but then we also want to practice by writing those similar text structures. And we also want to emphasize sentence level construction and paragraph level construction. We talk about that when we talk about reading fluency, word automaticity, sentence level automaticity, passage level automaticity. Same thing goes for writing. Word level is kind of that spelling. We know what it looks like. We know how to spell it. Sentences, we can put those words together to form a sentence with a noun and a verb, descriptive words, those sorts of things, and then move on to paragraphs where we can organize those sentences in a meaningful way. So again, building on each of those things. This is a nice graphic of the standards. So I know now we have to put, well, maybe you always had to, put standards in your IEPs, like what writing standards you're going to address. Most of those writing standards are one of the 3 text types, so either narrative, informational, or opinion. And then you also have the production and distribution of writing standards, and you have those language standards in there. So those are kind of the big buckets of where your reading standard, or your writing standards would be addressed if we have a student in special education. But this document then shows how those are connected to reading. So if we have our standard around conventions, so that's purple. So then these standards 4 through 6 in speaking and listening, and standards 4 through 6 in craft and structure should all be standards that we are teaching both in gen ed and in special ed. So think about how we can integrate that reading and writing through those standards as much as possible. This is a nice little visual of which standards I can really hone in and pay attention to and which ones I can ignore for the time being. Moving on, I want to just show you the simple view of reading, and then we're going to show you the simple view of writing. So this is, down in a nutshell, what you have to be a skilled reader. This research came out in 1986. It's been around for a long time, okay? We have language comprehension strands, and we have word recognition strands. These are multiplicative. So if I don't have any of these things, this is a big fat 0, but I have all 3 of these things, I'm not ever going to become a skilled reader, because 0 times anything is still 0, right? If I don't have any of these skills, these are a 0, but I have all 5 of these skills, doesn't matter, because this times 0 is still 0. Kids have to have all of these around language, and they have to have all of these around word recognition. A lot of times we'll have kids that can do these things. Their phonics is fine. They have a sight word bank. They can pick out sounds, but that they can't read. And this feels like if they can do these things, they should be able to read. They have to be able to do these as well. So if you have kids that have one and not in the other, these might be the areas that you want to be focusing on. But all of these things intertwine together, then both intertwine together to become a skilled reader that's fluent at executing and coordinating word recognition and text comprehension. So have to have all of these pieces, okay? From there, we want to show you the simple view of writing. So this came out in 2003, and these are the pieces that we have with the simple view of writing. So transcription has handwriting or typing, spelling, mechanics. We know this quite well. We know these pieces take into account when we are instructing with our special needs kids. But we want to make sure that we're doing at the sound level, the word level, the sentence level, the passage level, okay? So if I can spell at the sound level, I know that A makes, 2 different sounds, right? A actually makes a sound too, so 3 sounds. Then we can put those sounds into words with more letters. Then we can put those words into sentences, and sentences into passages. So transcription moves along that continuum. Text generation is turning those ideas into text. So can they get some ideas Do they have a word bank? Can they make the right word choice? This includes conjunctions, this includes transitions, this includes present tense, past tense, all of those things. The content, are they picking the right content to go into their writing? And are they picking the correct text structure to convey their message? And genre writing, of course, is also another piece of that. And then the last one is self-regulation. So this is what writers do to meet their writing goals. So goal setting. This isn't just a teacher sitting with the student in a conference saying, I want you to do more higher level vocabulary. It's a great goal, but how are we going to hit that? And how do we make a plan to do that? So how do we also plan our writing? So that pre-writing, that writing process of planning and organizing and monitoring what goes in there is all good pieces. And then this revising is so hard at the special ed level because we give those probes once a week, right? And it's 1 minute to think and 3 minutes to write. They don't get to go back and revise. And that's the assessment piece of it, right? We are seeing what they can do independently. But while you're instructing, really encourage kids to go back and reread what they wrote and see if they can recognize mistakes or if they're not sure about mistakes. That helps build self-regulation. Okay? If they go back and revise and say, I'm not sure this is how you spell the word, they ask for help. Why aren't you sure? Then you can kind of figure out what their thinking is around how they're spelling words. So don't forget to really be focusing on that revision while you're instructing with writing. So here they are again. This is kind of a text version of the previous slide. Word level, sentence level, passage level, transcription, the text that the writer generates. Here's where your punctuation comes in. It's your mechanics. And then your self-regulation again with your revising and all that. So why do we need to support children with intensive early writing needs? It will definitely impact their overall literacy development. Cannot leave it for, oh, maybe it'll happen later. Oh, maybe they'll get it later. We have to teach it at the same time. Integrating knowledge and thinking critically. Our special ed students can think critically. We still have to have high expectations for those students. And giving them the opportunity to write is going to give them the opportunity to think more critically. And then we want to see if they can communicate what they know, not only verbally, but through text and through writing as well. And that will give them success in school and later life. Yay! Many students experience difficulty with writing, but can make great improvements. If we get that early identification, they get early instruction, and we do progress monitoring to ensure that our instruction is working. Okay? So here again is that simple view of writing. We've talked about these three things. The one we haven't talked about yet is this constrained by attention and memory. So all three of those components are constrained or are limited by attention and memory. So that is, children have a limited amount of attention and memory to devote to any particular task, right? So when one skill, such as transcription, is particularly difficult for a student, he or she will need to focus on that skill and will have very limited attention and memory to devote to the other skills, such as text generation. So it's really important for children to become proficient in each of these three areas in order to become proficient overall in writing. So don't forget, if they can't do all of these things, we might have to focus on one of those areas. So we do have some materials called database instruction for beginning writers, I believe it's called. And it was put together by University of Missouri and University of Minnesota from a grant they got from the federal government. Within these materials, they start at letter formation. So this is really early beginning writing, right? It's forming those letters and understanding the sounds that go with the letters. So they'll teach both of those things in this writing intervention. Even though it's a writing intervention, we're not going to write letters without talking about the sounds, okay? Then we also have a word dictation kind of level and assessment. So we're going to transcribe certain things. So for this student, you can see real quick what the student knows and what the student might not know. So you look at sock here. He's got the right ending sound, but doesn't know that there can be a K at the end of that word. Mine, he's got MY for my, but knows there's an N in there too, right? So we got to talk about that vowel consonant E spelling pattern. Score, same thing, S-C-O-R-E, or has that O sound, right? Or the R controlled sounds. Gear has the EA, so there's another vowel team that we have to teach. So you can learn a lot about what kids know on spelling patterns and what they know, or phonics skills and what they don't know, and then we can teach to those skills. All right, so the next one then is the picture word sentence level. So this one's slightly more advanced assessment, and it measures both transcription and text generation because they have to actually transcribe the words, but they're generating text around a picture and a word. So the student is given a series of pictures and words, and they write a sentence about each picture. And again, this is timed, so they write as much as they can or as much as possible in those 3 minutes. But this is another piece. And then another assessment that we can do is at that passage level or the story prompt. And we do this quite often in the upper grades for sure. This is still a more advanced text because it's at the passage level, but it also is just transcription and text generation, right? It's just at the passage level, okay? All right, so here's the materials: data-based instruction in early writing. So there's the University of Minnesota and the University of Missouri. And trying to get out of this real quick so I can go to that site. So here's the website. You should be able to link to this on your PDF that I sent you, or that Jeff shared with you. So here's the information: University of Missouri, Department of Special Education, data-based instruction in early writing. There's the information about the grant, what it is. Here's some handouts on the 2 books. One is on intervention, and one is the assessment book. Each book, I think, costs $40. If you buy them together, I think they cost $40. But I don't know why you'd want one and not the other. Unless you're going to buy one assessment book for your building and then the intervention books for each teacher. But I would not encourage you to buy these until you know you need them. Every Heartland special ed consultant has a copy of these 2 books. So if you believe you have a student that needs that letter formation or that word level, passage level, sentence level, if that looks like, oh, that would be a great starting point for my student that I have, talk to your special ed consultants, ask them to borrow the books, and try them out and see if it works with your students. So there's more information on this page that you can use. I'm not positive, but for some reason I'm thinking that Taylor at Mitchellville might have used this with one of his students last year. I think Christina might have shared it with him. And maybe there's a teacher at Centennial last year that used the DBI materials. For some reason I think Christina told me that. And if you did, raise your hand. Everyone wants to know who you are if you've used these materials. Those would be your go-to people to see if they've done it and how they've seen students grow using them. So use your teachers that have done it before, talk to your special ed consultants, try those materials out with some of your students to see if that might be a match. If it is a match and it does work out, then we can talk about buying a set for you as a teacher or for the building. But we're not just going to buy things to buy things. We're only going to buy them if we know that it's a match and that it works. So try it out with your special ed consultants first. There are 2 links here to webinars on these materials. They're wonderful. There are some pieces, at the beginning you can skip over because they're just selling you stuff. But use data to individualize the instruction. How can you enhance the students' writing? So I think these are each about an hour long. And I'm sure you have lots of hours to spare to watch webinars, but these are really good. So if you are interested in them and want to know if they'll work, I highly recommend looking through those webinars. So I'm going to go back to the simple view of writing. I'm going to leave this here for a minute. We're going to pause, and I want you to really think about these areas. What do I teach when I'm teaching writing to my special ed students? Does most of my time end up here? Do I get any of instruction here? Do I do anything with self-regulation? And if not, how can I add that? Even thinking about resources, what do I have with spelling and mechanics? Most of the time, it's probably going to be what your core materials have in them. I know some of you are piloting WonderWorks. I don't know if that's just reading or if there's some writing in there too, but this would be a good time to share that if you're piloting those. And really think about too here at transcription, is it at the sound level, the word level, the sentence level, the passage level? And think about if I'm at passage level, maybe we need to go backwards and hit sentence level and make sure they're firm on that area first. So we are going to pause here a second and have you do a table talk around what areas we currently are teaching in, what resources we have that would help us instruct in these areas, and then maybe make a list of what you would need more learning around or more materials around in any of these areas. So we really want to hear from you as to what works, what you learned, and how we can move forward.